Good morning. We are here for the third meeting of the Guide International Workshop, and before giving the floor to the speakers, I wish to introduce a little change in the opening session. Mr. Khan will not be able to participate to guide the workshop, and he wrote us because he has been requested to undertake a one-week mission elsewhere. He apologized for this inconvenience and wishes to guide the very success for the event. It is with pleasure that I introduce Mr. Injait Benjeri, who is Chief of Section of ICT in Science and Education and Culture, the Information Society Division of UNESCO. He is here with us and will take the floor this morning. After this announcement, I wish to give the floor to Alessandra Briganti, which is the Secretary General of Guide Association. Alessandra.
Grazie. Do il mio benvenuto al quarto workshop internazionale della nostra associazione Guide e naturalmente vi ringrazio di essere intervenuti così numerosi. Anche quest'anno i temi di discussione che abbiamo proposto hanno riscosso l'interesse dei nostri associati e dei docenti che provengono da tutto il mondo e che condividono con noi l'obiettivo di favorire lo sviluppo socio-economico dei rispettivi paesi utilizzando le nuove tecnologie della formazione a distanza. In particolare, in queste 2 giornate della nostra conferenza, l'attenzione sarà rivolta alla centralità dei processi di orientamento e del problema della riqualificazione professionale, al ruolo delle tecnologie digitali nello sviluppo dei processi di insegnamento e apprendimento, in particolare delle materie scientifiche che registrano in tutto il mondo, in particolare in quello occidentale, una crisi, come sappiamo, di vocazioni. E infine all'uso di metodologie e strumenti innovativi, fra cui il mobile learning. Ora, prima di lasciare la parola ai colleghi, vorrei ringraziare in particolare il professor, chiedo scusa per la pronuncia, Indrajit Banerjee, responsabile ICT, Scienza, Educazione e Cultura dell'UNESCO, e Anton Mangsl, direttore della divisione Capacity Building della FAO. Quindi grazie e buon lavoro.
And now the floor is to Indrajit. Please have a seat.
Well, very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I was, of course, dashed into Rome in the last minute because Dr. Abdul Wahid Khan couldn't be here with us. But I'm very happy to be here, and I find it very amusing. Last week we had a lecture at UNESCO by a well-known consultant, and the title of his talk was Why E-Learning Fails. I think our presence here today itself goes to prove that it's not the case. Albert Einstein once said in his inimicable manner, "I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to find it when I need it." And I think with some minor modifications, this could be a principle by which all e-learning can be initiated. Let me begin by thanking the organizers and Guide Association for this very kind invitation and for organizing this extremely timely and relevant conference. At the outset, let me inform all of you, distinguished colleagues, that I have no intention to lecture a room full of e-learning experts about e-learning. So my main objective today is going to be to highlight some of the trends and issues when it comes to e-learning, as well as UNESCO's own perspective and activities and initiatives. And I'll be more than happy, of course, after the session is over, to discuss with you individually and find ways, and I think that's my main objective, find ways of how UNESCO can support all your various institutions and activities. In spite of decades of effort, access to even the most basic forms of education continues to be a major challenge in many parts of the world. Governments, international agencies, and the community of educationists continue to grapple with a wide range of barriers to literacy. These barriers do not merely restrict people from access to education, but in the long term, marginalize them from all forms of socio-economic opportunity and participation. The sheer scale and scope of the problem of illiteracy is alarming. There are today, and these are very recent estimates, an estimated 759 million illiterate adults in the world, of which 64% are women. This illustrates also the strong gender inequities that cut across the spectrum of access to education. These inequities also are particularly striking when one considers the geographical spread of illiteracy. Over half of the world's illiterate adults live in just 4 countries: Bangladesh, China, India, and Pakistan. India has the distinction of having the world's largest illiterate population, with more than 270 million illiterate adults today. When it comes to primary school education, the statistics also are rather alarming and disturbing, with about 72 million primary school-age children and another 71 million adolescents who do not attend school. UNESCO, when it considers the issue of access to global education, as most of you know, we have an extraordinary program called Education for All, and e-learning sits in very well within that context. We look at 4 key principles when we discuss e-learning. First one is access and reach, of course, very basic. The second issue or principle is equity and gender. The third is quality and effectiveness. And the last but not least, the relevance and lifelong learning. Access to education is a starting point, and this basic human right has to be ensured. So any intervention must, of course, begin with considerations relating to access to education. The second principle of equity and gender refers to the fairness in the distribution of education resources. In the planning to access to education, attention must be focused on the principle of equity, and thus concerns such as equitable access to education for people in rural and remote areas, as well as gender equity in access, must be given full and due consideration. The third principle refers to quality and effectiveness. People do not only need access to education, they need access to quality education. In many parts of the world, while access to basic education is provided, the quality of infrastructure, teachers, and resources simply do not provide the quality education that is required for people to develop their capabilities. In addition, the best possible teaching learning practices must be ensured so as to enhance the quality of education. Last but not least, and I think it's an extremely important principle when discussing e-learning or other forms of learning, is the issue of relevance and lifelong learning. What we have witnessed in many research projects and studies in recent times is that while some e-learning is very useful and relevant, if it is not constantly updated, it becomes irrelevant over a course of time. Major societal transformations and the emergence of knowledge societies add significant demands on the education systems of nations. Constant advancement in technology, changing work environments and markets, and the need for people to retool and upgrade their skills require that people be provided with courses to keep up to date with changing needs and realities. Lifelong learning thus becomes an important principle that needs to be taken into consideration in the new world of education. Faced with these alarming trends and challenges, countries around the world have attempted interventions aimed at improving access to literacy and basic education, with varying degrees of success. In this array of interventions that have been deployed, one of the most promising initiatives is what we know as e-learning. In recent years, e-learning has become a buzzword, and numerous initiatives and services have emerged. The 2008 report of the Sloan Commission on the status of online education in the United States revealed that over 20% of all US higher education students were taking at least one course online. Hazel Associates estimated that e-learning is the fastest growing subsector of a US $2.3 million economy, global education market, and the market for online higher education is estimated to exceed US $69 billion by 2015. So these are indeed promising signs in terms of the expansion of e-learning and the adoption of e-learning around the world. Of course, as all of you know, e-learning has numerous significant advantages compared to other modes of delivery of education services. Just to name a few, e-learning provides access to the best education resources from around the world. As you know, MIT and many other top institutions today have all their materials online, and this provides a tremendous incentive to further our interests and implementation of e-learning. Quick and easy ways to create, update, and revise course materials through low-cost, off-the-shelf software. Increased and flexible interaction with students through email and discussion forums. Location and time-independent delivery of course materials. Interactive and dynamic learning experiences through online assessment tools, simulations, and animated learning objects. I hope the interpreter is not having a problem of interpreting this. All in all, e-learning provides a powerful, cost-effective, interactive, and dynamic mode of delivery of education resources to a wide number of people located anywhere in the world. However, let's be honest, one must not underestimate the numerous challenges which affect e-learning initiatives and deployment. Many e-learning initiatives in the world have failed or are encountering severe challenges. There are a diverse range of issues which hamper the success of e-learning, including, for example, one fundamental thing which I have found when I travel around the world, and especially talk to governments, is a lack of trust in the value and effectiveness of e-learning as a delivery mode for quality education when compared to conventional classroom-based models. And this seems to be a real problem. When I was in Jordan recently, the government said, how effective is it? Is it as good? Do the degrees have enough weight? Can you get jobs with e-learning diplomas, and so on and so forth? So there's a lot of skepticism which I think has to be overcome. The other major issue which we have discovered at UNESCO is the low ICT competency of teachers themselves. And in fact, this has been found out to be such a major issue that UNESCO undertook a very significant project, and I'm be more than happy to share this with you. We have developed something called the ICT Competency Framework for Teachers. This is a set of benchmarks, indicators, which you can use to assess the competency level of teachers around the world. And based on that, obviously, we prescribe ways in which to upgrade the skills of these teachers. Choice of software and delivery platforms is also a problem. Choice and customization of courseware and educational content. Adaptation of e-learning modules to the diversity of teaching, learning, contexts, and situations. And this is interesting because while e-learning gives you great flexibility when it comes to delivering content, modules across the world in your own time, very platform independent to a certain extent and location independent, they are not that sensitive to different user needs. Different students have different capabilities, different students react to content in a different way, and e-learning doesn't have that flexibility for the moment. While none of these challenges are insurmountable, they require effective solutions which take into consideration the complexities of the teaching-learning dynamic. As far as UNESCO is concerned, we are now focusing our energy and resources in 3 key areas. And again, as I said before, I'd be more than happy to discuss these with you and see how we can work together on these fronts. UNESCO has just launched something called its Open Suite strategy. And this is basically, in a certain sense, to try and bring all our work in ICT and education together under one umbrella. Why is it called Open Suite? Don't ask me. The name was chosen before I joined UNESCO, so I can't do much about it. But this Open Suite strategy has got 3 components. The first is open educational resources. And here we're making a lot of effort from UNESCO's side, along with our partners globally. By 2011, we plan to have 5 regional digital repositories of educational resources. We are benefiting enormously from South-South cooperation in this area, and these will be of great value to all e-learning institutions in the developing world. UNESCO is also developing its own open education resource platform, where we intend to put up all the content that UNESCO has produced, from education to science to culture and to communication. and we will be allowing communities of practice to freely share and copy content. The advantage with OER, as UNESCO looks at it, is that when we put up some content, any institution can then go and take a copy of the original content, do whatever customization, localization is required, but UNESCO can trace and track what changes people are making. For example, we have one very interesting resource, which is the model journalism education framework, which have been adopted by over 40 countries. So this is a framework, this is a curriculum we have developed, but then we can see when China or any African country or any Latin American country takes copy of this original resource, educational resource, what changes are they making to it? That way we see we can also improve our own curricula by getting feedback from different users, different customizations, and this is a very interactive and interesting approach to developing content. The one initiative here, which again I would like to share with this particular community, is what we call our open training platform. This was launched in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, it is an online directory of more than 3,500 e-learning courses. They cover 21 subject areas. These courses come from 9 UN partner agencies, including ITU, of course, FAO, World Health Organization, ILO, UNESCO, UNEP, and others. This has got 630 over training providers, which consist of both commercial and non-governmental organizations. We have had over 1 million visitors on this portal. I'll be more than happy if you people can also get online to our online training portal, add your content, suggest link to institutions. That way we can actively and jointly build this portal. The second major initiative UNESCO has launched under its Open Suite strategy is open access. As you know, access to scientific information is one of the major challenges of our times. Scientific journals are extremely expensive, unaffordable, and therefore a lot of the scientific knowledge that is created in one part of the world doesn't travel to others. So we are now tying up with developing countries, universities, think tanks, research institutions, and government policy units to see how we can facilitate sharing of access to scientific information. We have also recently taken a very interesting initiative, which is to map which are the major global access to open access to scientific information initiatives around the world. Once this map is created, then we can link all these institutions and then provide access, much greater access for people to scientific information. Last but not least, our third major initiative is in the area of free and open source software. You may or may not know UNESCO has a free and open source software portal which tells you what are the softwares available, how do you use them, for what particular specific purposes, and I would welcome all of you also to come onto this portal and connect with our work. We have already launched several open source software platforms. We have ISIS, for example, which is a free open source library management system, which is being used by many countries in the world. We have something called Museolog, which is for museums to do their archiving and databasing. We have Enrich, and we have many other such programs which are already out there. So basically, in a nutshell, UNESCO's unique mandate, which focuses on peace and development, and we being the largest single UN agency who looks after education, e-learning is a matter of great importance, concern, and relevance to us. Once again, I would welcome all of you to connect with UNESCO, and I look forward to fruitful deliberations and exchanges in the days to come. Thank you very much.
I would like to ask Professor Liu Wenfu, Dean of Continuing Education College of Shanghai TV University.
Good morning, distinguished President, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to have such a kind of chance to be here to introduce Shanghai TV University in the advancement of e-learning. My topic is the advancement of distance education in China and the role of Shanghai TV University. Shanghai TV University, located in a quite competitive environment, has achieved the goal of quadrupling of its enrollment in the last decade and become one of the mega universities in the world. I will give you 3 main points. First, how progress made in a quite competitive environment of Shanghai. Second, the system's approach in expansion and use of technologies. The third, STVU has made a significant contribution to the promotion of the massification of the higher education in Shanghai. Now, the first one, how progress made in a quite competitive environment of Shanghai. Here, maybe all of you know Shanghai is a big city, and also the education in Shanghai is quite competitive. Shanghai's SHTVU has become an open university which uses telecommunications, radio and TV, computer networks, and other modern information techniques as its major means to conduct distance education. This picture is our school's website. Until March 2010, STVU has set up 12 specialties for bachelor's degree and enrolled 429 students, 18 specialties for underbachelor degree, enrolled about 71,000 students. This picture is Shanghai. So you see we have 47 campuses, all the working stations and teaching sections all over the city. As UNESCO chaired in ODL for East Asia, STVU has held a number of international conferences and benefit from intensive international exchange programs. STVU sponsored the first global summit of mega universities in 2003, and also the 18th AAOU annual conference in 2004. And also STVU hosted the 2008 ICD Scope Conference in Shanghai. Dear President, both of you have been to Shanghai in that conference. Okay, the second one, the system's approach in expansion and use of technologies. Our motto is for all learners and all for learners. We keep the teaching systems approach in making our expansion strategies. This is, I'm sorry, just in Chinese. This is for the China student system because of the time limited. The strategy of using of technologies. The purposes of unitization of technologies is to serve the mission of the university. Our strategy is exploring the proper and the best combination of all available, both of new and old, technologies suitable and reachable for different categories of learners in different courses. In our progress and practice, STVU puts focus on learner-centered and self-study-centered philosophy and put theory into practice with following 3 L's. 3 L's means a new 3-dimensional interaction teaching model. First L is guided learning, second is self-learning and assistant learning, which contests on learning and learners. In the middle is self-learning. This is guided learning. In the ground is assisted learning. We have a different context to mean that. We have a lot of means to interaction between teachers and students. During the teaching activities, teachers and students interact to each other, and there are all sorts of topic discussions. We use BBS discussion on net, question and answer via email, telephone and on-the-spot group investigation, and so on. And also we have the face-to-face classes. We also have a series of information management platforms to guarantee the teaching qualities. On the basis of making use of the software of CRTVU, STVU has designed and applied a series of information management platforms. The 10 platforms are information management in STVU as follows as students recruit system on the web, the platform of teaching plan and curriculum management, application system for taking the credits of the courses without examinations in the distance education, teaching and research platform on the web, etc. We also have the mobile campuses on net texts. Here just some website about this one. STVU attaches the great importance to the practical resources construction for students, including teaching texts, video order program, electronic lecture notes, self-tests, assignment tutorship, virtual experiments, distance experiments, and MP3, mobile learning sub-website, and etc. The promotion of the massification of higher education in Shanghai. STVU made significant contributions to the promotion of the massification of higher education in Shanghai, and also the advancement of education for all and lifelong learning. About the high degree education also got very fast. In terms of the degree education, STVU has maintained the enrollment of 100,000 students for 8 consecutive years and cultivated a huge number of graduates at the colleges and the junior college level, which propels the massification of higher education in Shanghai. About the non-degree training, we also satisfy the needs of citizens for lifelong learning in Shanghai. We have an average of more than 500,000 person times are trained annually in regard to non-degree education. Setting up the lifelong learning e-file for 4 million Shanghai residents. And also we conducted the literary training to 4 million migrant workers in Shanghai. We are also offered education services to underdeveloped regions in China. STVU provides educational services to underdeveloped regions and disadvantaged, aiming at bridging the digital divide. STVU provides quality educational resources and related teachers training to underdeveloped regions such as Yunnan, Tibet, Ningxia in China, all just a very poor province in China. We use the satellite and the internet to train the teachers and give the quality educational resources. We also facilitating international exchange and sharing Shanghai experience in all over the world. As a UNESCO chair in ODL for East Asia, in the hope of sharing the achievements of ICT and distance education with other developing countries, STVU has funded the participants for developing countries, including Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, North Korea, and Mongolia, etc. We also got some achievement. STVU has been keeping its focus on meeting the rapidly changing demands in Shanghai. In 2008, STVU passed the quality audit given by ICD experts. And also, we got ICD Prize of Excellence for institutions in 2008. In the same year, STVU has got the 2008 UNESCO King Hamad Prize. And also, in last year, in 2009, STVU got the China National First Prize in Higher Education, which is the only and the first time in distance teaching in China, got the first prize. 4 years ago, STV got the second prize. Okay, in conclusion, I would like to express my thanks again for the invitation and to all of you for your attention. Thank you, and welcome to STV, welcome to Shanghai. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now the floor is to Anton Manxi, which is the Director of Knowledge Exchange and Capacity Building Division of the FAO Roma.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Maybe let me start with explaining that my job has a little bit changed in FAO. I am now the Director of Knowledge Exchange, Research and Extension. We have also the portfolio is a little bit broader now. And before I go to the distance learning, just a few words. We are in charge of knowledge sharing, dissemination, information, knowledge management in FAO. And also this includes now the support to extension and research systems in our member countries, and the overall coordination of capacity development. And within this area of work, we have decided some 10 or more years ago to explore the power and possibilities of e-learning. This is my today's presentation. Why did we consider new approaches in training, in capacity development? FAO develops a lot of normative materials, rules, procedures, guidelines, and there's an incredible demand and a request in our member countries for training. And traditionally, what did we do? We have workshops. We send our experts to the countries. And you can also imagine how, in a way, how few people you can reach with these traditional methodologies. Even though, I have to say, I believe in traditional world, FAO trains around 100,000 people in shorter or longer workshops every year. But this is not enough. So what are our requests from our countries? As I said, are advice, assistance in training, and develop our methodologies and share with member countries. And as I said before also, I'm referred, how can you cope with the demand with the face-to-face training? I'm not saying that face-to-face training is not an excellent methodology of delivering, but it's not in our modern times no longer the only way to do things. We would not have enough human resources, and we can also not offer access to the resources, the high costs of traditional approaches in learning. So we developed our own strategy. First of all, I have to say myself, when I have been asked around 2099, I did not have a lot of an idea about e-learning at this time. So we started to build our own knowledge, our own capacity. We had a 1-year visiting professor from Canada who came on his sabbatical to help us to analyze the readiness of FAO. And then I have built a team in my own division. Some of my colleagues, Christina Petracchi and 2 others, are here. And if you have questions after and also during the coffee break, they are better placed than me to answer you the questions. And what we did, yes, we developed our e-learning to meet the needs of the organization and the member countries, and to build on existing resources, existing know-how in FAO, and very important, begin to collaborate with other agencies and institutions who are facing the same challenges. I think this is a very important one. I do believe no one organization can believe our expertise is in agriculture. My office is also in ICTs, but you can do a better job if you find partners for collaboration. And I appreciate very much my colleague from UNESCO, and we have been in UNESCO in contact since many years. build on existing networks of experts and institutions for the development of content, also for translation, what we call adaptation. Otherwise, I would have to go to our translation service in FAO, which would be extremely expensive and extremely inefficient for this kind of materials, because you cannot just translate e-learning modules in a traditional translation approach, and the distribution of the material. The role of e-learning in FAO is also to build awareness and understanding. This was a very important task for myself and my team within FAO. I was scratching my head when I given the task as general to worry about e-learning. I was asking if I go to all my director colleagues in different subject areas like plant production, animal production, what would they think about should we go for e-learning? I decided not to do this approach. I decided to develop the methodology in my own area of expertise in information and knowledge management, so nobody can blame me of doing something completely crazy and wrong. And the theory was, and which worked out very nicely, once we have developed our material, we show it to colleagues, and they would come and say, wow, can we have this for our subject as well? And exactly this was a successful strategy. And to go on to this slide, to provide on-the-job training for technical staff, as we are not a university, so our task is to provide training for people in the jobs in the concept of lifelong learning, but I will say later a few words about links to university, and to make available our materials, and also support the face-to-face training and capacity building activities. There's no such a thing that you can only work in the mode of e-learning. What are some of the contributions from our partners? Sometimes we ask them, we invite us to lead the development of a course, because as I said, not everything has to be done in FAO. I think I was very pleased a couple of years ago we had a very rough external independent evaluation, and one of the messages we received, FAO should learn to be a better partner. FAO has to understand we are not alone in the world, but this is true also for other agents, not only for FAO. But I like this because this has always been our principle in my division. Then what can partners do? We start the development of a new course with a workshop. They can design and host a designing workshop. They can provide subject matter expertise. This is, for example, a very important lesson we learned. We have a wide range of subject matter experts in FAO, but we have not been very successful to get our own expert to be involved in the development of the training materials for several reasons. Because first of all, they are not really good in this area of work, and they are too busy. So we depend very much also on external expertise for the development, and also use the existing materials and number of other topics, tools and applications. Also very important, financial and in-kind support, because we do not have a huge budget for doing all this work. We depend also on contributions from partners, donors and partners. And as I mentioned, the translation and adaptation, we for sure need also partners for the peer review and testing, and the dissemination and evaluation of the materials. As I said before, our first project was our own, in our own area. We called it at the time information management. Now we would call it information and knowledge management resource kit, but this has been started long ago. And as all the issues I raised before are reflected here, we started from the beginning with a partnership approach. For example, UNESCO has been leading with one module on digitization of libraries. And we have a long list. I would not name all of them. We are up to 45 international, regional, and specialized organizations are partnering in this very specific area of our work. Published so far as modules are the management of electronic documents, because what also has been mentioned by our UNESCO colleague, one of our concerns is how can we help specifically our partners in developing countries, to make their content available, to learn how to publish and contribute from out of their research and their institutions. Then we had the digitization of libraries, I mentioned. Investing in information for development, this was a tough one. We felt, and some partners asked us, what is the point to train more librarians, more information managers, if their bosses, their directors have no clue and no understanding on the power of information management? So we tried to get also material for decision makers. I'm not sure, Christina, if this is the most used from our modules, maybe not, because they are as a hard clientele to get to sit down and do an e-learning, self-paced training. But the material is available. Then a very important one in the context of FAO as a knowledge organization, to build electronic networks and communities. This is another module we have developed, and networking in the support of development, and another one for the Web 2 for development. There are others in progress, the management of spatial data, and there is one about digital libraries and repositories. Again, what our colleague mentioned, we are very active in the area of open access, because we need to mobilize content worldwide in the agricultural sector. Knowledge sharing for development, and another one, we have been asked with partners to develop a course on scientific and technical writing, which is in capacity building. If you think about research organizations to be developed in developing countries, there's one of the issues is how do I learn to write a good article on my work. Then, as I said before, our outreach to other departments, we have now in the meanwhile also quite an impressive list of learning material in other subject areas of FAO, like in food security, plant genetic resources, impact assessment from our technical cooperation program, right to food, and food safety. This is what I mentioned before. I see as a huge success of our office that others do come now and say, we do want to benefit from your know-how on how to develop this material and help us to get good training material in our own area of expertise. The food security is a very comprehensive material now, but we benefited from a huge grant FAO received from the European Commission, and we could contribute in this huge project to develop our material. What is our methodology? As I mentioned before, it is not always FAO, but it's experts, but you need senior subject matter experts, field practitioners, and people who help to develop and design the curricula. The content is peer-reviewed, and a very important aspect is pedagogy, because if you go for self-paced learning, you better have your material developed in a way that it's really easy to use. And what I also learned, one of the lessons, when we had our own first module, trying to use my own colleagues in my own division for the development, I got very angry because nothing was good enough. That we did our training for so many years, and now you guys, whatever we show to you is not good enough. And at the end of the process, what the lesson learned was for those colleagues also, this was a great advantage, because finally, after having our e-learning course, we have also the same material in PowerPoints. It's the first time that they are prepared when they go for a classroom exercise, because they have high quality material. In the past, they do what we all do. When do you prepare your PowerPoint? I don't do it at all. I have my wonderful people helping me. But otherwise, you do it in the airplane maybe, or just in the hotel. So you have then also for classroom activities better material. Our materials are delivered on the web, on CD-ROMs and on SCORM. What CD-ROMs is an very important area for us, because if you think about your clientele being very much in developing country, and the frustrating thing is, again, ICT is one of my areas of expertise in FAO. It's frustrating that even now, if you go to universities in Africa, you make offers. We have a huge program on literature delivery with scientific publishers, but they cannot download an article because the connectivity is not good enough. So you need to have an offline delivery mechanism, and what we do through CD-ROMs. And this is very quickly also the different delivery mechanism. And as I said, CD-ROM, internet, face-to-face training material, facilitated workshops. And I think what is the beauty of this concept, if you once have your material developed for e-learning, you can use it in a multi-purpose way. You can do blended, you can do facilitated, you can do all kind of fashions of learning, but the basis is you have to have your material available in a appropriate format. Adaptation to languages is a huge challenge for any UN agencies. We have 6 official languages. Officially, everything what we publish should have be published in the 6 languages. We are cheating a lot here because we don't have the resources. But again, we are working with partners. We have, for example, for Russian is new for FAO because Russia did join FAO recently only. We have a partner in the Ukraine. We have partners in many countries to help us to adapt the material to the languages of the regions. We can do this very quickly because more or less I did talk about this. What are our approaches? The material we deliver is not only the e-learning material as such, it's also PowerPoint slide, learner's notes, class activities and job aids. So it is very comprehensive material, and anybody who would like to learn more about and to see, as I said, Christina and other colleagues are here. Then the collaborative learning, I mentioned this also, so we can do this very quickly. This is a very important methodology also, that in addition to just try to have self-paced learning, you can have other methodologies where people learn together, or maybe often with a facilitator. Blended learning, I mentioned also. We said when we started blended learning, the best of the both worlds, there is no doubt. For example, you can ship CDs if you plan a workshop, and part of the course could be done by the learners themselves, and then you have bring them all together in a classroom or also in a virtual classroom. One of the interesting observations I made about my own strategies, I completely forgot in all of this work we did, our own staff and our own consultants, because my focus was to deliver to our member countries. And only after when delivering our comprehensive food security material, the European Commission came and said, wow, this is excellent. We need this also for our own staff. Our sister agency, the World Food Programme, said, oh, we need this for our own staff. And I finally discovered what's about FAO staff. We are working now with our Human Resources Division also to make it available within FAO as well. And they are thinking about the FAO Virtual Academy, where we would be a very important partner. Last but not least, Christina knows, to my long-standing hobbies and questions I had again and again, acknowledging we are not a university, but what about having this material developed? Could it not be also used by partners in universities as part of master programs, for example, and to build a part of a curricula? And we have now we had a number of requests. We have just signed last week an agreement with the African Virtual University. Christina also managed to get a very nice project together with the Open University of Catalonia, and they are really building this into their master program as part of the master program, our food securities material. And then the students can benefit also receiving degrees, what we can and we should not try to do in FAO. How much did we achieve so far? We have until now around 160,000 users, but only 20% online, the most of them based on offline learning with CDs. And we are also very keen, and I said this before, the delivery of our materials should be also done very much with the help of partners in the UN family and beyond, because we make our material available free of charge. We just do want to know an agreement and to get also, I would like to know also, because we have a research-based programming system in FAO now, we have to report also back to our member kind of our achievements. So it would be very nice if the partners would give us data how much they have used the material. So this is self-explaining. The most of our learners seem to be quite happy with the material, the quality of the material, the way it's presented, and there are some very nice phrases we receive on feedback, and we are very proud of this because it's a lot of work to develop this material. What has worked for us? Number one, at the top, you see partnership approach, because as I said, we could not do this alone. This does not work. Asking the target audience what they need, not just develop a course, because I know what you need, no, have them involved. Asking the experts what to deliver to meet these needs. Coordination of authors and experts is very much our job. Instructional design, addressing the digital divide, and the language coverage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations on the new job. And now, last but not least, Professor Goranik will give us the keynote speech. Professor Goranik, President of College of Learning, New York, USA.
Okay, so I'm David Gorelnik from a few different places. I'm from New York. Work in the private sector at a company called Kaleidoscope Learning, where we do online learning mostly for big companies and for nonprofits and public audiences. And I will actually talk a little bit about our work later on. And also Teachers College at Columbia University, which is where I teach e-learning design, sort of based on my work in the private world. So I try to bring together a little bit of both the academic research side and putting things into practice. I'm going to talk about online methods for vocational training and some new ways to go about that, which is one of the themes of this conference. I'll start with a little bit of history. It's the early days, the apprenticeship model, okay, which goes back to craftsmen in ancient Babylon, the 18th century BC. Which, by the way, Rome was one of the places where this doesn't even seem old. We talk about this in the US and people think that's a long time ago. Here it doesn't really surprise anybody. But the apprenticeship model is very, very old, okay? Where you would apprentice, you would learn your craft by working with an expert, working with a master, and becoming expert by following what they do and learning from them directly. And that was really the early days of vocational training. Okay, so what did apprenticeships mean? It was a learn by doing approach by today's terms, right? So you learn by doing. You'd practice. You'd have a coach or a mentor. This would be what the person would do for you. You had this really nice one-on-one environment where somebody was there watching you. The Babylonians used the apprenticeship model to train craftsmen, pass on skills. Wikipedia says, this was common in Greek and Roman culture. It's been common in a lot of places. By the late 19th century, it became less popular because really you needed more workers. So this is kind of how the history seems to have gone. It's a useful model. You learn really well from this potentially if you have a good mentor. Why don't we see it more today? A lot of it is that it's very expensive. You need a lot of time of an expert. Most people who are experts are spending their time working. They're not spending their time individually training the next generation. There also aren't enough masters, necessarily, for the number of new workers that you might want. How can we create new workers quickly? And with only this model, that wouldn't really get us that far. And other models have kind of taken over. So first, the standard classroom university model, you'd have the need for mass-producing people. You would then teach them in a university classroom kind of setting. Okay, you have an instructor, you have people physically in a class in place. And then more recently, the online university model. Now, what's interesting about these models is they are generally tend to be more instruction-based, meaning somebody's teaching you, not all the time, you in a big group, and somehow the doing component often kind of gets lost, right? If you're sitting in a class, there's not a lot of opportunity for doing. There are different ways to structure courses, so there's some in and out of classroom time. But quite often, the doing part gets lost, and something I'm going to talk a little bit more about as we go on. I'm going to bring one concept also out of the literature. As I did promise, I'd bring academic research into practice. Cognitive apprenticeship, which Alan Collins, a guy I used to work with, and John Seeley Brown and Newman put together in 1989. They wrote about cognitive apprenticeship. What does this really mean? Okay, so they talked a little bit about, again, the history of apprenticeship. That was the way people would learn before there were schools. And then they suggest that, even today, complex skills are learned informally through apprentice-like models. Okay, so people still do learn in an apprentice kind of form. They often learn on the job in an apprentice kind of form. You work with someone who's your supervisor and you learn from that person. And this can work really, really well. But again, it's not following a didactic teaching model. You're not necessarily being taught. It's more of a doing model. It's more of an interacting model with observation, coaching, and what Collins, Brown, and Newman call successive approximation, so getting sort of closer and closer to sort of the optimal behavior. This, again, works very well, but it isn't necessarily what we always see in vocational training today when it's more structured. Right? So interestingly, we have a method that works informally, but when you go into formal environments, you don't necessarily see these methods in place the way that maybe we might want to. Okay. One more quote. So I'm quoting this Alan Collins article. Their view of cognitive apprenticeship is that even more than in a traditional apprenticeship, the tasks and problems are chosen for specific reasons. So you're not simply learning whatever it is that your master is showing you today, but there's more of a curriculum in the sense of choose problems in a particular sequence, start simple and build up. Make sure you cover all of the different complicated issues in a way that will suit you and suit your cognitive processes, in a way that will enable you to learn in the best way. Okay. So you want people to start with, we're talking about learning skills. So you want them to be able to start with skills that maybe it's often with the simpler ones and build up from those to more complex skills. Okay. Which is very different from simply saying, here's everything you need to learn in a big list, which is sometimes what you end up seeing. Even on-the-job training, we'll often see companies where people are given an orientation course that is primarily information rather than skills. And so the cognitive apprenticeship model and past apprenticeship models focus more on skill-based, on skill acquisition, and that's kind of one of the purposes here. So in technology and vocational training, how's that work today? Certainly I can give you the U.S. perspective more than anything else. We have online learning, online universities reaching a large audience, often with what are more traditional instructor-led courses. There's a professor, there's some online interaction, the students do something online, they will take a course, but it's in that sort of semi-didactic teaching model. They're not necessarily practicing skills. Again, they're being more often given information. Vocational training in the U.S. Has expanded and expanded, particularly in the online world. Self-paced online learning is more and more popular. We work with some clients in this area who serve these populations. And self-paced learning works well for a lot of reasons. One is anytime, anywhere learning. Generally cost-effective, don't necessarily need an instructor. And then another thing that I'll address is that often people like the idea that there's an objective exam score. So they give them a multiple choice exam, and they can compare students and decide who passes. Now, there are some concerns about how well that method works. So let's talk a little bit more about that. First, let me show you a few screens from what I consider to be a fairly typical vocational e-learning course. This is a publicly available course that it's in an area where we've done some work, has nothing to do with us other than it's a company that we've met. And it's sort of an example of the traditional approach. Okay, so like I said, this is public. You can go find it. It's in the apartment industry. It's to teach people apartment management, and they have a very simple, straightforward structure where you read something, maybe see a little diagram, and you click on to next. And so this is considered an entire course module. It takes you about an hour to complete it. You will supposedly learn sections of a plumbing system, delivering water to the home. This is what you're going to learn in this. So this is a course about the practical applications of plumbing. Okay. Then they give you a couple screens where you see sort of the overall picture of what is it like to get water to a community and all that kind of thing. And this kind of goes on this way. It's all text with a few graphics. It's the entire course followed by a multiple choice exam. Okay. So now you get to see a little bit, fancier where it turns blue and you see the water finds its way to the treatment plant. And this is not unuseful to know these things. However, it's really hard to see how this makes you a good plumber. Okay? If the idea of this is to teach you plumbing skills, and you end a course where you've read about what it's like to be a plumber, it's unlikely that you would be able to then go out and fix a toilet. Okay? But in the vocational training world, that's what you need to do, right? The whole point, the entire goal is based around you should be able to acquire these skills. It's nice that, the background is good. It's good to know where the water comes from. How does it get to the house? How do the pipes work? You do need to know these things. But skills kind of tend to be lost. And these are often considered by the community to be a complete course. So this is a course on plumbing. I've learned about plumbing. But really, I kind of haven't. Okay, so each course, I guess this one's approximately 2 hours, has a multiple choice exam. It's very passive, right? You saw this, the screens we just saw were representative of this course and many courses like it. It's text, some graphics. You read, you click next, you go on. Okay. And while there are plenty of times where such a method is more useful, particularly when you're talking about skill acquisition, it's very hard to learn skills this way. Okay? So getting back to some of the things we talked about, why doesn't this approach really work all that well? It's not situated in context. So you're not learning in the context where you would perform the skills, and it's not skill-oriented really at all. I'm learning some background information, and I may be told what to do, but I don't get to practice it. I don't get to really think hard about it. It's a much more passive approach. So again, it's incredibly difficult to learn how to do anything this way. And when we're talking about vocational training, you need to learn skills. The multiple choice exam scores, depending on how the exams are designed, but these often measure factual recall and not skills. So people who succeed on these, they might have the best memory, but they might not be the best plumbers. I know I happen to have a pretty good memory. It gets a lot worse as I get older. I'm not good at using tools. So I would probably do really well on the plumbing recall course after taking this online course. I would not do well if you actually gave me a pipe and a wrench and asked me to try to stop your plumbing problem. I wouldn't be able to do that. But courses like this would give the wrong information, quite possibly, right? So you would have people who do well on the exams and wouldn't really be all that qualified. So let's revisit the apprenticeship model for a second, okay? So there's a model that a lot of things about it have worked. In fact, according to what we read in the history, the reason that it has not been as popular is for reasons of scale, not for reasons of actual failure, right? It's very hard to scale up. You need enough masters. You need experts' time. It wasn't that it taught people badly, okay? There's an issue with the level of consistency isn't always the same. I may learn differently, but that's not necessarily such a bad thing. Had a few major advantages. You learn by doing in context, right? So when you're apprenticing yourself to someone, you're learning right there. If I'm learning, stay with plumbing, if I'm learning from a plumber directly and I'm following him and helping him on the job and watching him and trying it myself in a real situation, you're really learning in context. The skills will transfer to the job. And you're kind of immersed in a realistic environment. You're talking about vocational skills. You need to be prepared for the real world that you'll be in. You need to be prepared for everything about the environment, which is not necessarily like a classroom. Even staying with this plumbing example that we have, because my example, as I'll show you in a second, is also related to this. Lots of things happen that don't happen in a clean classroom world. You have people walking by, you have leaks in the apartment, you have people yelling at you because their apartment is a mess. There's a lot of stuff that happens in a realistic context, in a realistic environment, and if you're going to be good at the job, you need to be able to deal with these things. And when you're in sort of a passive reading mode, it's very hard to capture that kind of thing. So when I'm advocating here is more online scenario-based learning. Okay, so we kind of have this issue where we'd like to capture as much as we can of the apprenticeship model, sort of the good of it, right? The in-context learning, learning by doing. But we do need to reach people on a large scale. Okay, we can't put everybody with an expert. We don't have even the equipment for everybody to go practice all the time in a real plumbing emergency. And usually people who have plumbing emergencies in their apartment want them to be fixed. They don't want some new person to come just, try things out in their apartment and mess it up. So there's an issue there as well. So online scenario-based learning brings some of this to a large scale in a sort of a safe way, right? You can practice without really causing problems. If you mess up, you're not going to cause leaks or floods. So you put learners in realistic situations. You try to ask them to make realistic decisions in an online world. And generally, there's some coaching, guidance, and feedback. It's not necessarily from a person. It could be from a component of the course. Okay? So we've done courses like this before. They seem particularly applicable to vocational training in a lot of ways. Scenario-based learning is admittedly more complicated and expensive to build than the kind of page-turning course that we just showed from the commercial product. Not always as much, I think, as people tend to think. I think it's gotten a reputation as being overly expensive. It's getting a little better now than it used to be, but there still seems to be a perception that e-learning, if you're going to keep it in any reasonable budget, should be is often page turners. I see this with clients all the time. The return on investment, the ROI, relative to these page turning systems should be very, very high. If you design something well, people can really learn from it. So if you're designing it for your own employees, you should get a return on investment. They're going to actually learn their jobs. If you're building a course for the outside world, certainly the appropriate kind of return is, are they really learning the job? Okay, so again, learners should be able to apply their skills. Okay, so let me show you an example of this kind of method that, again, it's never ideal. You never get everything that you want, but a case where we've taken for a client in this industry of teaching people how to do maintenance in apartments in the U.S. In that area, here's an example of one way that scenario-based learning can work in an interactive way and teach you something more substantially. Okay, this is called the Certified Apartment Maintenance Technician Training Course. We don't get to name these. This is for people who will be apartment maintenance technicians, which means they are learning everything about plumbing, heating, air conditioning. If you live in a building, these are the people who, when something goes wrong, they fix it. Okay, for the future. So to wrap up quickly, where do we go from here, aside from more evaluation, which I'd love to see? I'd like to see more scenario-based courses. There are a lot of different subject areas that could benefit, not necessarily from the diagnosis model, but from a learn-by-doing scenario-based approach. Okay, a self-paced, online, with some kind of tutoring, taking the same things that have worked in other in-person methods in the past, but giving them a way to scale up. Also, better scenario-based courses. This is kind of a low-end course, even by kind of what we do at our company. It's not all that immersive. It's kind of reasonably fun to watch, but there are ways to make this more immersive. You could put people in a much more interesting environment with more money. We could have fancier videos. We could have more videos. We could make the entire video world on the screen where you could really see what a real bathroom looked like instead of just a small photo. So there are more interesting and more useful things you could do with a larger budget. More realistic environments, get closer and closer to a learn-by-doing world. And as technology improves, you may even be able to find yourself doing things with virtual reality technology and with more sophisticated technology that sees where your hands are going. Sometimes you feel that things on video games such as the Wii are more advanced than what we're doing in learning, and that's not necessarily a great thing. I'd also like to see wider distribution. We often see scenario-based courses as a small niche in the marketplaces. This course I showed you, despite the fact that 1,000 people signed up from this online university and several thousands have signed up through our client, it's still not the norm. You see many more people taking the course that I showed you at the beginning than taking the scenario-based kinds of courses, and that's something that certainly can improve as these methods get more and more widespread. Okay. So that's what I have. I want to kind of just give a feel for some of the different kinds of models and how we can take some of the learn by doing and apprenticeship styles of learning and put them in an online format, and how that's really just, I think, the beginning of where online self-paced vocational training can go and scale up. So thanks so much for listening.